we're about to wrap it up. Vote on a bill. Vote on a deficit mitigation package. We announced that we would be here today about 12 days ago. We told the public that, yes, we are in serious trouble. That trouble is getting worse. We're convening as a new legislature on January 7th, and we're coming right back 1 week later to roll up our sleeves and get to work. And maybe, just maybe, the general public was watching us tonight, or maybe they'll read about what we did in tomorrow's paper. And if they do, I can't help but think they might be a little confused about what they saw. Because in every newspaper, and every headline, on every radio, and every TV, what we have all confirmed here tonight with our words is that the state is facing a fiscal crisis the likes of which we've never seen. They've probably read that we are looking at potentially a $1 billion deficit, and that we as a legislature have to act fast. And yet they're going to scratch our heads because they're going to say when that legislature convened on the 14th of January for 12 hours, they could not cut or reduce the deficit even as much as what the governor wanted them to do. And we know that even in her plan, she was several hundred of millions of dollars short. They're going to scratch their heads because some of the things they heard contradicted themselves. They heard about how we as a body have to deliberate, study everything, look at it all as one big piece so we can solve this puzzle. They heard things like we can't decide these things in a vacuum, and yet they watched when amendment was proposed to consider tens of millions of dollars of collective bargaining agreements in the context of the budget. This General Assembly said no. For that part, we did not mean that we couldn't decide in a vacuum. They're going to scratch their heads because they're going to have seen that various attempts to mitigate our budget were met with the retort, that didn't have a public hearing. That didn't have a public hearing. Whether it was our pay cut proposal, whether it was immediate aid to our municipalities by way of getting rid of unfunded mandates, we were told, good idea, but it didn't have a public hearing. And yet when the question was asked of Representative Derogosian with regard to whether the bill we're about to vote on had a public hearing, the answer was no. Good representative said, I've been here 5 days, we haven't had a public hearing on it. And yet, we had a public hearing on the governor's mitigation plan. We had time for that. But there are various things in the bill we're about to vote for that never had a public hearing. They're going to scratch their heads because they're going to say, with all the trouble you're facing, you're talking about cutting and tightening and sacrificing, and yet you passed a bill that actually spent more money than you had ever appropriated with no public hearing. I don't get that, they might say. It doesn't make sense. We could have been proactive, realizing that our deficit will grow to upwards of $1 billion and taking more action. And yet the soundbite that might come out of here is, we did 90% of what the governor wanted. We're trying. Well, I wouldn't blame the public if they thought we ain't trying hard enough. That we didn't make real cuts, that we didn't make real sacrifices.